competency-based curriculum. But first, may I begin with you? Why do you think there are certain inadequacies leading to the formation of a task force and then getting back to the people to seek their views?
Thank you. And let me begin by, I'm a student of management.
Okay.
And there's a theory we studied in the university, and it was advanced by Douglas McGregor. It's called Theory X. And it says that every human beings are inherently lazy. And they have to be pushed, coerced, threatened, so as to cooperate and so as to work. And so, for me, I'm seeing the role of opposition, even in the conversation that we were having. Without a very clear opposition, we will be in for a very rough ride. And this goes to even what we are seeing in education. Without another push for government to do good, human beings are inherently evil and lazy. And so we really need to think also as citizens, what push are we providing so that government can be able to serve us and serve us well. Now, coming to CBC, I think I'm feeling a little bit better now than I were during campaigns, because during campaigns we were treated to conversations of CBC will be scrapped and so on and so forth. It was a good rallying call because in this country, people loved hearing. You know, politicians have mastered that they want to tell Kenyans what they want to hear. But take office now, and the reality sets in. And I'm really excited about the idea of a task force because it really moderates, you know, the feelings, and it also will give the executive a better and a fairer picture. And 2 weeks in, if anybody has been keen, you saw the president now saying, we are not going to abolish CBC. We are thinking about how to make it better. The deputy president also followed suit to say that we are not abolishing CBC. We are only looking at ways to make it better. So I think from where we sit, the country has sort of some direction, although not very official, as to where really we are headed. But I think sitting here today, and it's in November, and we're looking at children that should advance, you know, especially the sixth graders, they should go to either junior secondary or senior, or you know, or proceed. With 844, we do not know what the presidential party is going to tell the president. But I think what is coming up now is that Kenyans are really waiting, and they want to know what to do because there is a lot of responsibility awaiting the parents. There is also the idea of psychological preparedness, you know, for the learners. And so I am imagining that maybe the task force will probably give the president a preliminary report. And that report should address what is the direction we are taking, because we cannot wait until December to tell the parents that we are now proceeding here. Because also there are other responsibilities that the ministry should undertake. For example, I am aware that the books have not even been printed. I am also aware that, for example, should the task force decide, therefore, that there is junior secondary school, I'm imagining the issues of budgeting. The budget of a child that goes to primary school is not the same as that of a child that goes to secondary school. So there are financial implications also that I'm just wondering that maybe there's quite a lot happening at the background. I do not know, but there's a lot of preparedness that we expect to see. Otherwise, January is going to be very rough for parents, and unfortunately, it might be very rough for learners, something that we do not really want. We just hope that the government can move with speed and just provide clarity. Okay,
but Janet, just to still with a follow-up on the same, this is a process that is engaging the people.
Yes.
Does it mean from the onset that this is a process that was overlooked? I mean, public participation is very key, well enshrined in the Constitution. Was it overlooked in the starting process?
Well, one of the things I would say is that public participation, it depends with, from where you see, we really do not have very clear frameworks to guide public participation. Let me say that I sat in the previous task force that was working on CBC, and when I've looked at the schedule, anybody can confirm, and I know there are records to it, that the task force went to each and every of the 47 counties and held town hall meetings. So I don't know how that does not qualify to be public participation, and this one then qualifies to be public participation. I'm also keen on the meetings that are being held in the counties. Matter of fact, I will participate in the one that is planned for Nairobi University. And so when you look at a setup where you come to Nairobi and you want to talk to people at Taifa Hall, what people are you talking about? You know, the talk has been that we are going to speak to Mama Mboga. I do not know that you can speak to the millions of Nairobi in one meeting. So I think also there are some exaggerations that have gone out there, and for the purposes of managing the people, it's just not fair to say that. And also say that in this, what are we talking about? We are talking about making a curriculum.
Okay.
There are aspects that cannot be negotiated in a whole. You know, the aspects that really cannot be negotiated. And unfortunately, this is the truth. I know there are those people who want to pretend that we want to speak to Mama Mboga, we want to speak to everybody. There are aspects that cannot be negotiated. Curriculum development is an expert issue, but maybe what are we talking about involving the people? Let that come out clearly, because I am not sure that you can draw someone from the street to bring them to KICD and tell them that this is what we are doing with the curriculum. I think we also need to be very honest with the people, because this is different. It's different from a campaign. This is actually now leadership. It's actually the future of our children that we are talking about. It also involves the people that know what needs to be done, explaining to the people. We are not looking at a situation where the people are the ones who will come to tell us what direction we need to take. I think also that needs to come out so that it is not confused to mean that it is the people who will tell us how we need to. I think that does not apply.
Honorable Kuria Kimani, then, because there were some stakeholders who were concerned, the Kenya National Union of Teachers, NAT, for example, in 2019, in findings that, after doing a research, did conclude that schools were woefully unprepared, teachers were never prepared, availability and adequacy of the teaching materials, level of engagement between teachers and parents, as well as challenges faced by school heads and the teaching staff to implement the competence-based curriculum. Will this process then that the president has to that effect appointed a task force bring all the stakeholders and parties on board? Will there be a point of convergence?
Thank you very much. From the onset, the issue of curriculum, competence-based curriculum, was supposed to be a departure from an exam-oriented kind of curriculum. Because you remember, there's a time we used to guard our exams, KCP and KCSE, I think even more than our banks. You know, during the exam period, they would mobilize the entire security forces to go and guard that examination. And remember, again, there was a time, then there was a rampant, stealing in the exam, where parents would even give a lot of money so that their kids could probably get grades that they actually don't deserve. So the curriculum, this competence-based curriculum was supposed to be a departure from that. And it's actually backed by, there's one professor, Howard Gardner, a Harvard professor, who breaks down intelligence to around 8 types of intelligence. And saying, that, for example, those people who you throw them into water and they almost automatically swim and they become very good swimmers. We have people who start running and they become very good athletes. We have people who, you just give them a microphone and they just listen to a particular tune and they sing very well. And you had people, a lot of people even make money and earn a living from just running or from singing or from doing something without necessarily having gone to school to do that. Okay. So the issue is now, can we now try to bring up a curriculum that is able to bring out that talent and that skill of that particular a person from an early age? So the idea was brilliant. The how it was done is where the problem is. Because, when we talk about public participation and we say we don't want to listen to that Mama Mboga on the street, it's very dangerous. Because this Mama Mboga on the street is the one who has been doing homework because the learning model of this particular curriculum is that there are so many activities that are supposed to be done at home now with the parents. So if you don't involve them or don't hear their views about how they should go about it, then you actually do get it wrong. And so I'm thinking that this is the time now to rethink that, yes, this is a good curriculum, yes, but how about its implementation? How about our preparedness? It's very sad when I watched, I think one of the clips circulating on social media about kids swimming in a field, like on sand, like I think they're supposed to, it was because on the curriculum, there's supposed to be a lesson on swimming, and because the school doesn't have a swimming pool, then the kids were there swimming on the sand. We've seen cases where the kids were being asked to bring chicken to school, and then it was the teachers who were eating them. As in, very horror stories, honestly. Okay. And so, so what you're saying, what we're saying is that can we have now proper guidelines on how it is going to be implemented? Okay. If you want to teach people a lesson on gardening, Why are you teaching them? You know, there are some places, for example, in this country, if you try that gardening lesson, it will not work. The way our classrooms are constructed, even the structure of the classroom themselves, because the model or even the seating arrangement of a CBC class should be in a particular way. But our classes, even now in our public schools, is still the way, you know, the desk and the kid just behind that. And whereas now the teacher is supposed to go and, you know, hold group discussion. Okay. So in terms of our infrastructure preparedness, in terms of the training of our teachers, in terms of availing those facilities, it was not proper then. And I'm hoping that this task force will now give us the correct way of how to implement this.
Dr. Pamela, there seems to be a consensus on the goodness of CBC, but the timing, is the timing right for that to be rolled out, given that there seems to be a shortcoming in terms of the infrastructure across schools in the country?
Thank you very much, Ayubu. Allow me to acknowledge that I would like to address this thing as a trained teacher and as a parent and as somebody who has gone through all along the education system in Kenya, right from primary when I was a learner myself and through high school as a teacher and then a lecturer at the university. And I think we agree that the abstract idea behind CBC is not bad. That one is understood. However, at the onset, the question we are still asking today about the timing, I think various scholars and concerned organizations asked it even when we were starting to roll out. Remember, today as we sit here, we have got grade 6. That means we have gone through grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And so it is now not when we are rolling out. It has been rolled out. The tragedy was, as Kimani puts it, the issue of rushing into doing it without looking at the holistic picture of what it will do to various stakeholders, the requirements per se. In fact, the so-called preparedness is such a deeper problem that even if we close our ears and our eyes and we continue, at some stage, our children and the so-called future we are really struggling to bring out are going to ground to a halt. Why? Because we know learning takes place in the child. And we are talking about a child-centered kind of learning. What does that mean? It means that as a teacher, then you must allow the learning to go at the child's pace. And it has to go according to how fast or how slowly or how medium the child can perceive and internalize whatever they are doing. And most of the learning activities should be kind of initiated by the child. And that kind of process, if you have handled anybody under learning circumstances, it's normally very slow, it's very intense, it requires such full attention of the facilitator on the learner to be able to move them forward, you know? So when we are talking about this preparedness, it needs to be very clear. It entails everything. One, we rolled out this thing because in 1 year we were told there was a pilot being done. Then before that pilot, we were told its outcomes, and it was not done everywhere in the country. Then we are told it is being rolled out. As we were rolling it out, the whole content of what was to be learned had not been developed. The materials to facilitate that learning were not yet there. So that they were grade 1, but people are not sure what was to be learned in grade 2. And the trend has continued and continued. Even now as we sit here, not every person who is involved in this learning is aware of what is supposed to be learned in grade 7.
Dr. Then why do you think?
And so the timing could have been fine if the government and everybody else involved was prepared, not only psychologically or emotionally or mentally, but also financially, because the real driver of this whole thing is the finance. The finance would have made sure that we have enough teachers. Like in countries where this kind of learning have succeeded, like we always quote Finland, Ireland, and all those lands, you know, we have like 4 to 5 teachers in one small classroom containing 25 to 28 children, so that there is one main instructor as others go around seeing what the children are doing. We need adequate space with every child having all the materials required. Okay. And on that material, allow me to say, when we are learning, for example, to make mats out of banana bags, has the government ensured, as the coordinator of the learning process, that the children in Nairobi have the banana bags, the children in Turkana have the banana bags, and everywhere else in the country, so that we foster that uniformity and similar quality. And when we are talking about that, then the space that he was talking about, even the size of the classroom, comes into play, the nature of the tables that we use, and the evaluation process then becomes useful.
Thank you.
So that when we are evaluating a child making a mat out of a banana bag, then it is uniform in the entire country. Okay. But if we can't do that, then we are missing the point. And even on the idea of trying to unearth the talents that are hidden in the children, allow me to say, I am a member of the former system and also the 844 system by virtue of spending 1 more year in primary school. Now, the issue of even running, singing, and all this, I remember even in those systems, we were made to sing, we were made to dance, we were made to do PE, we were made to do art and craft, and all those kind of things. What am I saying? In fact, in the first place, as I remember the goal, the major goal of 844, it was to produce this all-round, self-reliant person who could not drop anywhere and then lack something to do.
Thank you.
And if that is the objective, then we don't even need to belabor about the issue of rebranding the curriculums, calling them CBC, calling them, you know, breaking down the years and all that. I think what we need to agree, all of us, is the idea is good, but the way we started implementing this thing and the way we are even going on still says we are not prepared to do it, especially from the point of facilitating it through funding that can sustain the teaching, fraternity, and all that.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm also having Dr. John Mugo, who is joining this conversation from the county of Kilifi. He is an education commentator. And Dr. thank you, and good morning. Thanks for making time here on the broadcast. Are the resources and the infrastructure available adequate for CBC?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ayub, and my colleagues in the studio. Allow me to make just a few points around this, because it is not fair to tell Kenyans who are listening to us that CBC is a rebranding of what we had as a curriculum in 1984. When you look at the situation now, and in 1983, then I was in grade 3, then things have changed a lot, and it is a usual practice for every country to review a curriculum over time. Now, what we had in 1983, there were several reviews. This CBC was not the first one. And those several reviews culminated into a lot of reports from curriculum implementation that informed the way forward. It's also not true that there was no public participation. Anyone who remembers in 2012, I think it was August 16th, we were at KICC when the first proposal was made. And that proposal was shot down. The second one came up in 2016. So there has been participation. Let me put clear 3 points. One, as CBC is a movement from the question of what do I know, or a curriculum that was focusing on knowledge only, to a question of what do I know and what do I do? And that's where the competence comes in. If you look at where we are now, like I am an employer myself, we do not look at papers. I mean, when we are employing now at my organization, we don't care whether you have a degree or not, because the work we do is not taught at the university. What we look for is whether you have that attitude, you have learning to learn. If we give you a desk and a computer, can you deliver what we wanted to deliver? So it is not about memorizing the theories of education, knowing about all those things that I know I taught at Kenyatta University. It is about what can you do, and that's the competence. The second point, it's around the wastage that has been there. And I think the few of us speaking here are the survivors of the previous curriculum. We are just 10% of us. As a country, we cannot have a curriculum that only favors 10% of the people. If you look at the KCSE results we had in April, only less than 20% scored a C+ and above. Now, it doesn't mean that whoever got an E or a D has failed. It's only that we have gone to a curriculum that focuses on the academic only, and yet we know that making it and succeeding in life requires both psychomotor, it requires the affection, it requires more than just the academics. So those are people actually victimized by the curriculum, and we owe them an apology, because the curriculum and the schooling life ought to have offered them what aligns to their intelligences. And anyone here knows about multiple intelligences, Howard Gardner. We are not created the same. So how can we be teaching all our children the same and calling that a good curriculum? The third point is about the balance between the head, the heart, and the hand, or what we can call the academic or the cognitive, the affective, and the psychomotor or the practical skills. Creating this balance is important. Look at what jobs are available out here. 84% of the jobs we have are in the informal sector. The jobs we are preparing our children for are not there. And 75% of the jobs that are going to be there in the next 10 years are not even created today. I mean, saying that we go back to 1984 to a curriculum that was introduced for people who are to stop their education in grade 8, because then transition from primary to secondary was only 30%. Now we have 100% transition, and our constitution says that basic education, which includes primary and secondary, is a basic right. So it is not, of course, CBC has issues. We had a very successful conference last November that highlighted 7 challenges that CBC is experiencing, and these need to be addressed. The teacher preparation, we cannot drive a curriculum successfully if we are not paying attention to what the teachers can do. If the teachers don't have these competencies, how do we expect them to facilitate this for children? Aspects of parental engagement. Now learning happens between home and school, and that is a fact. Parents have to be engaged, not those that are educated, but all parents can do something and are doing something, because learning happens across between home and school. Aspects of cost, but of course cost, we need to look at not just the direct cost or what is costing us, but look also at the opportunity costs and the wastage that the previous curriculum has brought. This opportunity costs that the economy and our country has been undergoing has been an issue. So there are issues to be fixed, yes. Okay. But we cannot say that this change and the reform was not needed. Okay, Dr.
Well noted. We'll be following up, because you have mentioned 3 very important pillars, and the teachers, the cost there, and also the parents. In this case, digital literacy will be a key component of the same. Janet, he mentions the element about one of the 3 pillars he has outlined, of course in support, but the timing is what he questions, and the aspect of the cost. I mean, how then is this going to be accessible for parents? Because there seems to be now the close cooperation between parents and their kids, especially with the coming of the competency-based curriculum, because of helping out in the homeworks given from schools. For people who live in far-flanked areas in the northern frontier districts, say a village in Kakamega, in Turkana, I mean, the access to internet or the penetration of the same. And for those who are in counties like Nairobi, Kiambu, Machakos, Kajiado, who have the access to internet, I mean, a kid would find more attractive features in Instagram or Snapchat than a lesson probably in his tablet.
Yeah, I know, and a lot of those things have been at the center of conversations, and I really like Dr. Mugo's submissions, because he really introduces where we have come from afar. Because even from since when we gave ourselves the Constitution of Kenya 2010, there was a need to realign, us to the education sector, to the dictates of the Constitution, and so on and so forth. And the conversation about what we need to do about our education has been here for long. And I can sit here and tell you for sure, as somebody that has been around the sector, there is nothing new. There is nobody that is going to write a brand new report that does not exist. There is nobody who is inventing anything new. What ails our education sector is funding. It is a shame to think that since 2002, when the late President Mwai Kibaki introduced the free primary education, the primary school subsector, every child was being given 1,200 Kenya bob from 2002. Today, 2 decades plus down the line, every child is getting 1,400 and I think 32 bob. It's an increase of an ordinary 200, which is not even an adjustment to reflect inflation. So people might run all over the place, but when the rubber meets the road, are we ready to commit funding to support the education sector genuinely? The infrastructure that people talk about, it is nothing if we are not going to commit resources. You know, I sit here and I listen to parents that say, do not give our children homework online because we do not have. And I sit here and I ask Kenyans, whatever shall we take seriously? In 2013, when the Jubilee government was campaigning to come in place, I'm very happy the president was a member of that. And children were promised laptops at grade 1. Every first grader was supposed to get a laptop. That was in 2013. To show you that there was already an admission in 2013 that online learning is at the center of it all. Because remember, we are not preparing a child to just go and work in your village or to excel in your village. Okay. We are preparing a global child. Look at us. From 2013, when we were promising a child a laptop, look at us how many years down the line, now saying that we cannot do CBC because it is expensive, it is telling our children to do online, it is telling, let's just get serious, that we have not been consistent in investing in education for long. And now, everything, it is what is coming, to haunt us. I do not know where we are going to get the requisite classrooms for us to be able to implement CBC. And for your information, when you talk about aligning our education sector, when Mwai Kibaki was crafting what really needs to happen to us as a country so that we move ourselves from where we are to a middle-income economy, education was at the center of it, within the 3 pillars. You know, the social pillar, education is among the component of the social pillar. And what you see now about CBC is not a conversation that was begun yesterday, as people are saying. It's a conversation that is so deep, and it is a conversation that even what you're seeing about the universities complaining about funding, there is something that needs to happen about our TVET. Look at how we only concentrate on about 2-3 children. I want to give an example of maybe Jehovah Jireh Secondary School here in Jiru, where out of 70 children that go through to Form 4, it is only about 2 or 3 that get the university degree. Or the university grade to go to the university. Those are the children that are giving us nightmares as a country. We want to think about how to fund the education. Yet, the 67 that do not get a university admission, this country is not concerned, and that is why we are where we are. Because we've left the bulk without support. Janet,
that is the societal pressure that many who don't support the previous system, for example, out of the 826,000 who sat for their KCSE examination, 479, more than 50%, had scored D+ and below. I mean, these are the people who are churning out to the society, and according to many, have no future. I mean, that is the concern that society is having. And Kuria, I come to you because Janet talked about the financing element here, and over a 20-year period, she said there has been a paltry increment of about 200
bob per child.
Because the Kibaki government in 2002, the late president, who was buried in April, had given 1,200 thereabout Kenya shillings. I mean, how will a paltry increment of that money then, Honorable, then be able to buy bundles, maintain gadgets, and pay the experts to maintain these gadgets? Because we are moving into a system that will be offering digital literacy.
You alluded that those students that get a D+ and below are the people that we're worried about because, they're not supporting the economy or something like that, or their problem. But let me differ a little with that opinion. Actually, the D+ students and below are the biggest driver of our economy in terms of labor. Because in terms of labor and the informal sector, those are the people that you find doing bodabodas. Those are the people that are masons at our workplaces. Those are the people that, for example, would be very useful in the farming sector. Because we had, before this, we trained everyone to go to university. When you train this someone and give them a degree, you're training them to be managers. But you're training them to be managers to manage who? So in terms of developing this rather semi-skilled labor, I think that's why we're getting wrong. And that's why the investment in our TVETs, to me, would be a game changer in this country. The question about universities and university funding, we need to ask ourselves, one of the most lucrative businesses now is private universities, is private colleges. Go to town and see how well they're mushrooming. If you look at their fee structures, they are not as they're almost the same as our public universities, even with the subsidy of the education of our university education, which means that we, as a government, as a country, we need to sit down and actually do the costing of some of the services that we're offering as government, and ask ourselves, how is Mount Kenya University able to offer a particular degree course at almost the same price as Kenyatta University, and yet we are still subsidizing Kenyatta University? So, and those are the questions that we need to ask yourself. Should we now go to the university and find where is this money going to, and how would you reduce this particular cost? Because we cannot have a private provider of an education system. Okay. Is spending the same cost as that of a public institution, and we have now to subsidize that. And again, on the issue of the involvement of parents and the costing and the bundles and the internet and all that, unfortunately so, we started free primary education. We came up with free secondary education. We have free this, we have free that, we have free the other. And we must agree what is the role of the parent. I was having a conversation with there was a student I was helping pay school fees, and then the discussion came about, no, I need particular I need a balance of this much. I needed a balance of 5,000 shillings to clear their school fees, and then I helped them pay the school fees, only for me to now realize that when I met that person, I think a week or two later, they had actually upgraded their phone. They have a smartphone and they have bought another one. Okay. Which means really that person actually had that money and they would have paid. But in terms of the priority they have, okay, in terms of how much they spend on, if you look at the use of for example, data, our internet, our mobile network providers are earning the most amount of money from data. But what are we spending that data on? TikTok, watching funny videos and doing all that. Other priorities. Okay. But if you are saying spend these bundles on downloading education materials for your children, that's where you draw the line.
Thank you.
You see, we must have that change of heart completely.
Thank you. Dr. Odhiambo, then when we talk about this holistic essence of education, it's for the betterment of the societal transformation and development. But then how do we drive towards that goal without losing focus, direction and energy to reduce poverty, for example, increase our human development index, job projects for individuals across the country, and also broader social economic development of the Kenyan society?
The underlying principle here in everything, any objective or any goal a nation may have, whether it is in agriculture, manufacturing, housing, and all that, education is an enabler. We train people. That is what we call education. We train architects, we train engineers, we train business people, we train everybody in the society through the education system. And therefore, just allow me to comment on something small that my colleague has just said. Okay. The question of the use of data, I like a bit of it, what he was asking. What do we use this data on? But the question is, according to me, why I still maintain that the government, which is the coordinator of the whole learning system, is not ready to roll this thing uniformly out in the entire country. The question is that internet accessibility. I'm glad those who are in Nairobi and Kiambu and wherever, we can access that internet whichever way. But those who are in the flanks of this country, I come from Migori County, and with my internet-enabled phone, there are some sections of that county that if I am there, you cannot access me. It will tell you Muteja. Now the question is, whose responsibility is it to make sure that that internet is available? So I'm begging Kenyans, let us not really mix up and confuse things. Like even what Dr. Mugo is saying, I agree with him totally, and we had all concurred. The reasons for which CBC is being thought about are all good and very noble. But the question is, the implementation process is not helping us to achieve those objectives uniformly throughout the country.
Thank you.
So when we are talking about empowering people, and look, even now, our current government, which is in place, what was the main carrier that drove them to power? It was the appeal to uplift the burden of the poor. And in those poor families, some of them do not even have a mulika mwizi. Some of them who have, it is one which is tied with ropes. And those children are told to download things. These are the genuine concerns that we cannot close our eyes to. Much as I appreciate what is happening in CBC.
Yes.
But look, God lifted me from the quagmire through those systems that the government had put in the place then to ensure that a poor daughter like me went to school to the level of a PhD. Facilitation.
Thank you.
Now, that's why we are saying, much as there are those parents who may not be willing to use their money to educate their children, again, our government agencies need to be very, very meticulous in identifying who are really the needy children. Look about even like the case of CDF. I thank God for CDF. But let me tell you, and Honorable is here, some of our MPs would use the CDF to reward their people who supported them, even if they are able. And you find that there is CDF, there is governor's scholarship, there is the presidential award, all this towards education. But by the end of the day, quite a number of our poor, real poor children and orphans are at home. So the question is, how do we consolidate all these fundings and make sure that we have enough funding through the ministry or whoever can be genuine enough to standardize education facilities across our country?
Thank you.
With that kind of approach, we will make it, and we will actually fulfill our objectives.
Well noted, because there are many tweets that we need to also take a look at. Before I go to, that is Dr. John Mugo is joining us from the county of Kilifi. So let's sample some of the feedback and what Kenyans are saying. We aren't doing this conversation in isolation, therefore we have engaged Kenyans, and this is what they are saying on the hashtag Daybreak on Twitter at Citizen TV Kenya, and at Ayub Abdikadir will be getting the sample tweets of Kenyans on the hashtag, and we'll be getting to them when we are done with Dr. John Mugo, who is in the county of Kilifi. Daktari, then there seems to be the broad agreement, and may I then ask you here, because to address the system's dysfunction within the education sector, there has to be the inclusion of the institution of parent, which is a key pillar, as you have earlier on mentioned. But we have seen, a crisis of a monumental level during the COVID-19 pandemic, where when schools were shut, hundreds of kids, thousands were at home, and they depended on schools for feeding program and also for place where they could learn. Therefore, the social mobility aspect. How do we choreograph this entire element and bring all the parties on board? Because there seems to be the clarion call and the unending concerns by key stakeholders.
Thank you so much, Ayub. I didn't get the question very well. I think my connection is not very good, but I know someone is typing it for me. But I think the questions being raised now on how we are moving forward. First, the issue of financing. I think we agree that we know now we have a very bold president, and we are calling up on him through the recommendations of whatever might come out from the presidential working party to just fix the things. Kenya is among the highest spenders of education globally. if you look at two parameters. One, as a factor of the GDP, we are at around 6%. You look at as a proportion of the annual budget, we are around 25%. That's among the highest. So it means that the absolute money may not grow, but there are issues within it. Why are we, for instance, sticking to boarding schools and the colonial system, that was created schools for the whites and Asians and all that, and now we call them national schools and extra county schools, a system discriminating its own children. So I think the boarding is one of the things to think about to bring down the costs. Issues of accountability. I think a significant proportion of the money that goes to secondary schools and primary schools is stolen. And we know this. How will the system fix this? Because a lot of leakage, that money is not going to children. It's going to individuals in many places. The issue of scholarships, who gets bursaries and scholarships? And how can we review a financing model that bridges equity so that those that really cannot afford education also have an opportunity? So these issues need to be addressed. The issue of the
Okay, we seem to be having a challenge in getting the final accounts of Dr. John Mugo, who was joining us from the county of Kilifi and talking about the resourcing element and the devolving of education in what he termed as the creation of privileged schools during the colonial era. Let's get Janet, Honorable, and Daktari, get the sample sheets of the feedback on the Twitter handle. Bob Otieno Wino says, the competence-based curriculum is a good thing being implemented at the wrong time due to poor infrastructure that is making it being an expensive affair to parents. Mm-hmm. Engineer Lazaro says the regime shouldn't be petty with the former administration. Let them implement their own policies, and we are here to judge them. We are sick and tired of being treated with wild blame games and empty public relations. Agumba Steve says, I think some induction is needed for the newly appointed CSS. You cannot work in management as a politician. Solving the Kenya Airways tussle does not need threats. In fact, the success, he says, of this strike, amid threats, it's going to open ears for more professionals to strike. Gode Barasawere says the CBC debate should put into consideration the infrastructural and capacity needs that must power up the program. It is the government ready, he says, to credibly set aside funds for these functions? And do we have an adequately trained staff ready for the competency-based curriculum? And Janet, there goes that question of the staff and whether they are ready. We need more than 50,000 teachers, and you have an examination forthcoming. Then there is no clarity as to the way forward for those who will be sitting for the national assessment. I mean, there seems to be a complex layer of this affair.
Yeah, and I think what I would really want to tell Kenyans is that when you look at a lot of politicians that are commenting about CBC, one of the questions I like asking them is, where do you take your child to school? None of them is taking their children through 844. They're taking their children through the international system. That tells you there's something they know about the international system, which is close to what CBC is working on. And really, as a lot of people seem to agree that CBC is good. It is good for our children. And the question is, I hear many people saying that it was implemented at the wrong time. And I want to ask, what is the right time? When is that right time that will come? When we have everything in place, when we will have those thousands of teachers employed, when we have all the classes in place. And I know for sure that it will not come. So I really sometimes want to commend the previous administration for being bold, because we could never, ever, have started. And when I'm listening to those people that now sit in positions of power, and including my very own MP here, who is talking about parental engagement to want to mean that parents should contribute money to support education. And I also have listened to submissions also from persons that are sitting at the Presidential Working Party, and they seem to have gotten a very wrong impression of what parental engagement is. I want to remind this government of what the Constitution of Kenya says about the right to education of children. And Article 53(1)(b) gives every child of this country the right to free and compulsory education. So there is no negotiation as to whose role it is to fund education in this country. And so it should never be construed to mean that a parent is being asked to bring something and people are looking at it like 100 shillings. I think we really want to go back to being lawful and honoring what the Constitution says about our children, because it is the same those children that will stay home. Remember a monumental thing that happened in our country when Mwai Kibaki came and said the 70 shillings, 50 shillings, free education. 1 million children came back to school. So I think it's for us to choose whether we want to proceed with a few. And I've also seen that one of the tactics of this government is to increase tax, you know, to tax you more, to increase NSSF. And I really want to say that we must rise up and protect the right to free and compulsory education of children. Even as we think about quality, we must say that the right to education must be secured, and it is in the purview of government.
Okay, thank you. Let's proceed with the feedback, and I'll come to you, Honorable Kuria Kimani. And we have Kipingeno Head Boy says the current government should decide where it wants to take the country to. Reversal of policies and contracts signed by the previous administration is in bad faith and won't solve anything. Let it initiate its own projects and stop which, and this is earlier we discussed. Let's proceed. And Oringe Waswa says the CBC rollout is the most critical task directly impacting on our education landscape. The government must critically consider the infrastructure, funding and personnel aspects of it. There should exist no room for mistakes here. Honorable Kuria Kimani, I mean, how will then be the domiciling aspect of the junior secondary school in schools across the country? Because there were some concerns yesterday in the counties of Nyeri and in Bomet. Some argued that the kids are not mature enough to be in secondary schools. Others said they should continue with the junior, but within the primary setup. And there seems to be no address of the same.
You know, thank you very much. This is a big question that our parents are really asking. You know, how do you have, there's a reason why the setup of having people in a particular age stay in a particular place in that school, and now when they grow older and they're in a particular age, this is a particular place. And so the decision of how this is going to be is a big decision, and I think we need to make. And I'm really looking forward to having, and I'm really hoping, and I know so, that the task force that's going out there to listen to parents and to listen to the stakeholders is not going to listen to them with a predetermined decision. You know, they are going to listen objectively, you know, to even listen to even that person that doesn't seem to know what they are doing or what they are saying, to listen what they have to say. Because after all, it's going to affect them. It's going to affect their children. It's going to affect their lives. For example, you know, one of the things that a lot of my constituents are giving me feedback about is when parents are required, for example, to do this homework with their children. And some of them, for example, work, say, in the hospitality sector and are working, you know, at night shift. You know, at what time, again, do they get to really support in terms of how they're going to help with the homework? So I'm really hoping that these people are not going to listen to these people with predetermined decision, that they're going to listen with the objective of adding value to the system, because we agree across the board that CBC is good, that we need to evaluate the skills of our children, not because of the grade they get in mathematics only, but from other intelligences, you know, that they could have. And we need to start nurturing them early, so that we make sure that we bring up, again, an all-rounded person. But for us really to achieve that, then we must bring, you know, everyone on board. And if you give me a rate of reply... Briefly. A rate of reply.
Because I need to get the Dr. account. Yes.
My panelist here said that one of the things that we're doing as a government is to increase taxes. And she mentioned NSSF. Let me give her a little of education. I'm saying this as a chairperson, Departmental Committee of Finance and National Planning at the 13th Parliament. We pay, I think, 200 shillings per month on NSSF. The employer contributes, I think it's 400 shillings. After saving for 30 years, what's supposed to be a pension scheme, you are paid 73,000 shillings as a lump sum. The cost of even managing, of sending these 200 shillings to the pensioner is not even, is even more than how much you're contributing. So how do you tell me that I have worked for 30 years, I have a pension that's supposed to take care of me in my old age, and you pay me a lump sum of 70,000. It's not even enough. It's not even enough to make one of the easiest investment people are resorting nowadays of buying a motorbike. So it's not increasing taxes; it's increasing savings, so that time when we retire, at least you can be certain that the many years of hard work, you have a fund that can take care of you, so that we also remove this burden from our children. You know what is happening now? When we hit the age of 18, when you get the first job,
yes,
the first thing we need to do is take care of the pensioners. And if we have a good pension fund and a good social protection system that takes care of them, then you're going to have people that even when they clear school, they're not starting from negative. In the least, they start from zero.
Okay.
Now they have to start from taking care of the pensioners.
Well noted. Thank you. Dr. Odhiambo, you have a point. May I proceed with the feedback? And Kenyans have sent in. I mean, before we proceed, Dr. Ari, because the tweet by the previous tweeter who had tweeted the aspect of personnel and infrastructure that we talked about, the 844 system has around 6 subjects. And you have the competence-based curriculum that we talked about, 13 learning areas, which is nearly double that number. In terms of the postings of the teachers, 1 in every 3 years, and you have teachers training colleges which across the country are not as functioning as they ought to be. I mean, there seems to be no balance of proportion here.
Yes, I think one of the things that I would request the task force to listen to carefully and see during this review what can be done is again the expanded learning areas. I know for international relations or fitting in the globe, there may be a need to learn foreign languages. But again, when we are talking of children whom we want to bring up in competence and we overload the learning areas again, it will definitely undermine what we are actually intending to achieve. So I was just giving the foreign languages, for example.
Yeah.
I think the curriculum, as I look at it and what is supposed to be learned by the children, if at all, we really have to make them really competent. It is not only finance intensive, but also time intensive. Because say you are teaching children how to cook, you need a little more time than if you are teaching them, say, mathematics or something like that. So I think there is a need to regulate that. And the case of the TVET and the vocational training centers, the TTIs, the TVET, I may say that there is a need for Kenyans also to be honest. Like the proponents of this CBC, some of us are saying that 844 was such a waste. Mm-hmm. But these colleges have been in existence. The only thing was the attitude. Everybody was emphasizing children going to the university, overlooking the TTIs and the technical training centers, okay, so that anybody who would go there was feeling a failure in themselves. I think this is the message that we need to change and tell our children they are not failures. As for where these children are going to learn from, allow me to say something about that.
Okay.
We acknowledged, I think you mentioned, that there is this concept of people thinking that the teachers need to be prepared between now and January.
Okay.
It is possible, yes, but listen. We have exams going on which are supposed to be administered by the same teachers, marked, and then results consolidated and released. So the current teacher, I'm not sure if all of them will get a chance to be trained, okay, and prepared for what is just about to happen. Meanwhile, let us remind the nation that as we sit here today, the 100% transition is not going to begin next year.
All right.
It has been going on. In fact, last year and this year, you saw the outgone CS of Education, Professor Magoha,
yes,
walking literally into villages and in the slums, even in Nairobi here, fishing out children who did not make it to school.
Thank you.
So what I'm trying to allude to is the concept of sending these children to some of the already existing secondary schools seem very slim. Why? Because as we sit here, they are class 8s who, again, must transit 100% to those secondary schools.
Well noted.
And that infrastructure question still arises. The money that the government give, and I know about it because I was in the education committee, most of the schools only got additional 1 classroom, which is already actually occupied by the children who are already there, because over the past 3 years, we have been sending more children to these schools than the capacity can carry. The boarding facilities are not there at all.
Thank you.
Therefore, it may be imperative to keep these children, even for the next 2 years, in their local primary schools.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well noted. Let's proceed with the feedback and Daktari, the passionate, of course, account you have given us. And here is some of the other tweets from the hashtag Daybreak on Twitter. Peter Gesura 89 says the competency-based curriculum was hurriedly introduced by the former regime. It's expensive to parents, he says, and secondary school teachers are not adequately trained for the course. As things stand, it will be a messy come January 2023. Odongo Roluk says, let's look for the advantages of CBC rather than concentrating on the disadvantages. I think it's the best form in our current educational system. Remy Butia says the re-imaging and recalibration of the education system is greatly impacting rural and poor schools who are at a high risk of being left out or behind in this great movement and innovation due to inaccessibility to technology and related gadgets. MC_Rumor says the problem with CBC is that it was implemented without public participation. Shareholders, he means stakeholders, were not involved. Schools ill-equipped and teachers are not adequately trained. Now the facilities are overstretched. CBC is not working, especially in the marginalized areas. Final comments from you, Janet, and Honorable Kuria Kimani.
I think for me it's just to, especially the question that you had asked about domiciling. And let me say that a great thought has to go into junior secondary schooling, because remember, Kenya is one of the most boardingized countries in Africa. A lot of countries are running basic education on day school, but our secondary schools, almost all of them are, boarding, the good ones, if you would say so. And so it wouldn't really make a lot of sense to have a 13-year-old going to secondary school, because that would do a lot of things. It would alienate them from the parents and so on and so forth. So it is in a lot, it's really desirable that junior secondary school be domiciled within primary school. But of course, there are the infrastructural, challenges and the issues of teachers. And I want to hope that maybe those are some of the questions that the current government is planning to address. And having said that, let me also say that many people seem to agree that CBC is a good idea. I want to also address a concern that has been raised by Mheshimiwa here about those parents that are feeling that they are being overburdened, when they are told to support their children with homework. And really, we cannot make decisions because I also had someone else say, I work on a night shift, and so I am not able to help my child do homework. Please, even if in what circumstances, there is nobody in this world that is going to parent your child for you. The only thing that we could be talking about here are what arrangements are you as a parent making so that your child can be able to get that parental engagement and hope. But we are not able to make decisions as a country just because there are few people that feel that maybe I work late, I come late. No, I think it's very critical that parents also get to interface, with their children.
Thank you. Yes, Honorable Kuria.
Thank you very much. The decision about kids transitioning from primary school to the junior high school, I will say this: let kids be kids. And the kids are going to be let to be kids by staying with other kids. If you bring those kids to stay with adults in the same environment, then it's going to be very detrimental to them and their career. That reminds me, sometimes even when I'm coming for the morning show, I see some school buses carrying kids at 4 a.m. And I'm like, what are you going to teach a 6-year-old? Why does a 6-year-old have to be in school at 4 a.m., really? And I think this issue about the CBC, we agree it's a good idea. We need to take care of all our students with their different abilities. It's not everybody who can get an A or is an A student or can get an A in this or the other. But even those that are not so good in particular subjects or in particular spheres of life could do very, very well in others if they are nurtured. And we need to not give excuses and make it work. Thank you. Someone said we are able to deliver ballot papers to every voter in this country. We can certainly deliver the learning requirements to our children, irrespective of how marginalized they are, or irrespective of whichever part of the country they are.
Yes.
If we can get ballot papers to the most remote places in the country, we can actually get education materials to those particular places.
And we have 46,233 polling stations in the last elections. Yes, Honorable Dr. Pamela, go ahead, please. In a minute.
Thank you very much. I am much aware that as per our budget, or even the GDP ratio, percentage spent on education in Kenya looks rather high. But let us face it, we might have to deliberately make a move to spend a little more on education. For example, when we are talking about laying the infrastructure, it is not just the classroom, but even that internet, that laptop, that printer. Because when you tell a child, download the picture of a lion and print, and where is he going to get this printer? Somebody has to provide it. If the parent can't, then the government must. And that borders on the issue of the right.
Thank you.
So if we think this is the right thing to go, then I believe policymakers and even all our government departments, we might find it reasonable to still even cut down on certain expenditures and bring the money to education.
Thank you.
Because we want to prepare a Kenyan who can be self-reliant. It is not going to be cheap, and we cannot cheat ourselves.
Thank you, Dr. Arian. And there is already an austerity in place by the government of the president in seeking more funds, and the 300 billion in calling upon other state departments to cut down on expenditure and unnecessary travels. And we come to a close. Thank you for your time and company, gentlemen and ladies. Janet Oko is an education commentator. Thanks, Janet, for coming and making time on the broadcast. Honorable Kuria Kimani is the Member of Parliament representing Molo constituency from the county of Nakuru. Thank you for your time. Dr. Pamela Odhiambo, a trained teacher, and gave us the expert opinion from her perspective. She as well served as a woman MP between 2017 and 22, representing the county of Migori. Earlier on, from the county of Kilifi, we had Dr. John Mugo, who is also an education expert and commentator, who had given us his account of the competence-based curriculum and the task force appointed by the president to hear from Kenyans, subject to, of course, presentation of a report to the president and the government by extension. Your time is all appreciated. And thank you to you too for watching the broadcast. I see Willis is in studio. He will be up next with his program in the next 1 hour. And we'll see you tomorrow morning. Safin and I will be here on Daybreak. Till then, by the grace of God. Good morning.